Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates. With your host, Cindy Gellermini.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spectrum Perspectives. And today I have the Autism Mom Coach on with us. Her name is Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the show.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
So Lisa's also an autism mom. I found you on, I follow you already on Instagram, but one of your videos popped up on my newsfeed. I was just trying to find it now, but I was very impressed. You were doing
the talking
this with one hand and you were doing this with the
Yeah. It took
like,
a while.
I was like, oh, she's talented. Like I tried to do it and I was like, oh.
Yeah, that was not my first take.
Yeah, so I'll ask you what that video was. You can redo that later.
Sure.
But first I want to find out about your journey as an autism mom. So you have a son with autism, correct?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's his name and how old is he?
His name is Ben. He's 15 and a half.
Okay. So let's go back to, because I ask every mom the same question. When you were pregnant with him, were there any red flags? Did the doctor pick up on anything? Okay. And how was the labor and delivery?
He was born on his due date.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, right. So not a preemie, right?
Not a preemie, right on time. I cesarean after, trying to go natural for a while, but
Okay.
He ended up C-section. Everything was fine. And, it's the story you've heard before, right? Things seem to have been progressing, as expected until about 18 months,
Right.
Very low frustration tolerance, really long protracted meltdowns, started banging his head against the wall, things like that.
Right.
Just
Right.
very frustrated.
Right. But for first time moms, sometimes you think, oh, this is, wow, the terrible twos are really something else. Boy, this kid's got a real temper, right?
Yeah.
What about, was he speaking?
No, he didn't start to speak until about 4.5. He was not really intelligible, probably until like 5.5, 6, maybe. We used to call it Banglish, right? Only close friends and family understood what he was saying. But then he became a very verbal child. Very verbal.
Okay. Okay. And then did he hit his milestones? Did he crawl on time, walk on time, all that?
Yeah. Yeah. Just the talking.
Okay. Okay. So how did you come to the diagnosis of autism?
So he turned 2. He still wasn't talking. We mentioned it to the pediatrician. I was more concerned with the level of frustration we were seeing in him more than the fact that he wasn't speaking in and of itself. And so that's when we first went to see a speech therapist, and there was, red flags of autism. And then we went to early intervention in New Jersey. That's where we lived when my son was diagnosed. And then eventually went to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and got a formal diagnosis.
And how old was he then? He was 2?
He
Right.
was 2, just a little over 2 years old.
Mm-hmm. And then what? Then did you put him in like, you had him in early intervention, you said?
Yeah, so he was in early intervention. We knew that the school district would take over when he turned 3 years old. We supplemented with some private ABA, was it ABA, speech, OT, PT, that kind of thing at a local, spot that did like a variety of things. And then he entered preschool at the age of 3. He had a one-on-one aide throughout his schooling. He was in general education up until 6th grade with, again, the support of a one-on-one para. And he was taken out for reading, language arts types of things and other therapies, but he was able to participate with his class and things like math and social studies.
He was. Okay. All right. Yeah. So he could speak then. And so he was doing okay. He was in public school, but he got taken out for a couple things. How was he doing socially?
Very pro-social in that he loved being around kids. He loved interacting with them. He had difficulties with things like taking turns, losing a game, things not going as expected. That was really challenging for him. People playing wrong was definitely a challenge. So when he was younger, the gap was not as big as it became as he got older. So being able to understand like how to join in conversations with friends, how to initiate conversations with friends, that became really stilted. And so he definitely struggled with that. But he always wanted to be around kids and wanted to be around friends. And he was very verbal in the sense of like very engaging, especially with adults. And, fast forward 10 years later, where I am now, and I've been told across the board, multiple doctors, multiple states, multiple professionals, he is severely impaired. He's severely autistic. And that really, it's just so interesting because he spoke, because he seemed to be pro-social. I really missed that. I mean, I knew how challenging it was. I knew how challenging he was. I knew where his struggles were, but there's really no category for kids who are verbal, who are not intellectually disabled, and who are severely impaired by their autism at the same time. And so, as he got older, the gap widened and that became more apparent where he was really struggling, his deficits. And so, by the time 6th grade came, his anxiety was super high. OCD emerged as another comorbid diagnosis. And we have since then, he's in the hospital now. We have multiple inpatient hospitalizations for dysregulation and things like that.
So where does he go to school? Does he go to a special school now, or he's in a regular public school, or what?
He's not in school right now. We're just in this in-between stage. He was in a school. We had him in a private boarding school for kids with autism. He was removed from that school, like almost like within a week. Then he was hospitalized. And so he's like in a limbo place right now in terms of schooling.
Yeah, I have a friend that I interviewed her, but we pulled the video. I never put it up. That she put her son in a private boarding school as well, and it didn't go well. And she had to bring him home, but she had to fight the school to get them, to pay for him to go there, and then it just didn't work. And it just sounded to me like, how could this be a school for kids with autism when they can't handle the autism and they're kicking the kids out? Like, that makes no sense.
I very much, there are different levels of, I guess, capacity to deal with certain, types of manifestations and aggression, especially in kids who are bigger. When they become frustrated, not all schools will handle, which is really frustrating and unfortunately part of the reality. So yeah, we are now looking for a more comprehensive setting, but that will have the capacity to manage behaviors if they are an issue.
Right. What are his interests? What does he like to do? I've had some people tell me nothing. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't even watch TV. Like, no, it's like.
If I used to say, Ben, what do you want? He'd say, I want to go to parties and I want a girlfriend, right? He wants to basketball, skiing, working out, hanging out with friends. Those are the things he really enjoys. He likes his Legos. He likes Star Wars. He likes, video games.
So what does he do when he's with friends? Like, who are his, like, I'm wondering, like, how did the other kids treat him, in school, and what are, who are his friends?
So, when he was in school in general ed up until 6th grade, just, everyone's kind of friends, right? In that situation. And so he was just friendly with everyone. He's a really likable kid. People liked him. And he really wanted to engage more with friends. He just didn't know how, but we did things like join ski club and things like that so that he could be around kids more often. With his, his he has, or good friends or like family friends. I mean, they'll do things with Ben on his level. And so they'll play basketball, they'll hang out, they'll do, they'll do things like that. It's just, it's the gap is just widening. Just
do they know he's autistic?
Oh
yeah. Well, some parents try to hide it. They don't want anybody to know.
Well, Ben will tell you himself. So, so I can't.
See, to me, it's better if you just tell the kids, then they understand, and then they're more,
Yeah.
They're more empathetic and they'll be nicer. Otherwise they think that's like your kid is just weird. I just don't understand why people don't, what
Yeah.
are you trying to hide? And it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. No, Ben will tell you himself.
Yeah. Do you have any other kids? Does he have siblings?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. So you're in that weird spot. You're not the only one. I mean, it's kind of people that are in your place, where you can't find, the right, help for them or the right schooling or place or whatever. Did you ever consider homeschooling?
No. Absolutely not.
No.
That nobody would recommend that.
Right.
This is a person who needs help. That would be like literally the worst thing I could possibly do, because he's already single person dependent on me, right? For, his reassurance loops, for all of his needs. And so to make me then in charge of another aspect of his life, that would be the most counterproductive thing we could ever do.
Right. What are your goals for him? For the future, like what would you like to see? Like, are you concerned with him graduating high school and getting a college degree? Like some parents just insist that their kids are going to go to college. Other people have more of a realistic view that's like, yeah, that's never going to happen. I mean, like, would you want him to live independently someday? Do you think he's always going to live with you? Like, do you think about those things?
I think that there's a big distinction here about what I mean. First of all, we can't really have goals for our kids, and we can have ideas and a wish list, but they're on their own trajectory. My son's severely autistic. He's severely OCD. College is not in the cards. I mean, I don't know that graduating high school in some form is. And so my goals are for him to be in a place where his needs are tended to, and that he can thrive and have an appropriate level of independence.
Do you see him maybe living in a group home or something someday?
I think that's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, if you can find one. Right. That's a whole other issue. The group homes is that's my sermon. They're not ready. They're not ready. The system needs to change, before that day comes, because they don't know what they're doing, and they're unqualified, and the people have, no training, and they're, making minimum wage, and they don't know how to handle our kids. So until something is done to change that, and they start hiring people that know something about autism. Anyway. All right. So let's change the subject. Let's talk about what you do as the Autism Mom Coach. How did that start? Where did you get the idea from?
Yeah, so I found coaching as a client first. My son was having a lot of increased anxiety and behaviors, and I was having a lot of anxiety with managing them on my own. And I turned to coaching as a way to really figure out how to handle what was going on in a better way. I had done therapy in various times of my life, and personally didn't find it helpful in terms of like, how do I do tomorrow better? It was very much like, processing trauma, understanding dynamics, understanding why I may do the things that I do or think the way that I think. But I was good, I felt, on that perspective. I'd done a lot of work. I wanted to figure out, okay, I know all of this information, but how do I stay calm when someone's yelling and screaming in my face, right? When someone's kicking a wall, when someone's breaking a TV. And so that I found coaching as a client at first, and I loved it so much. I found it really useful for me in my life with my son. And I wanted to know more. Just learn more. And so I got certified. And then once I got certified, it was like, how could I not offer this to other autism moms, especially because I know that there really aren't any resources dedicated to us. Like, all the resources for parents are really for the children. It's like how the parent can help the children. Now, while this coaching will help you help your child, it's focused on you. And that's what I really that's what I want to do. I think it's been such a benefit to me. And I think it's like, we all say like, we need to live forever, or, and things like that when it comes to our kids. But it's like, realistically, like if we are going to support them in the way that we want to support them, we need to be able to really take care of ourselves and really be able to model the level of regulation that we want to teach them.
Okay, so walk me through it to give me an idea of some of the things that you do with your clients. Like what are some things that come up that you can help them with? Like you said, like when they're having a meltdown, how do I stay calm,
Yeah.
right, during the meltdown?
So yeah, so I coach parents, essentially moms, essentially on burnout, just high anxiety and burnout. And so, for instance, if you're melting down while your child's having a meltdown, like the first thing we want to do is understand what's happening.
Mhm.
I know what's happening with them for the most part, right? You can tell me they're yelling, they're screaming, they're throwing their stuff at me. Okay, great. What's happening inside of you, both cognitively and somatically? Because what they're doing is just the circumstance. It's not causing you to, go into fight, flight without you having some thoughts about what they're doing. And so I like to check what's triggered in my clients, right? It's not just that they're having a meltdown, it's that other people are watching, other people are judging me. If they're acting like this now, what will they be like in 5 years, 10 years? All of those thoughts are creating more anxiety in your body, putting you in fight flight. When you're in fight flight, you are reacting, you're not responding. And so I like to sort of shine a light on what's really happening for the parents to see what they can do ahead of time to downregulate themselves. And so when your child's having a meltdown because it's time for school and they're doing this every day on the clock, it's like, it's not a surprise, right? So how can we think about this in a way that doesn't jack up our nervous system, but it helps us to stay a little bit calmer? For
Mhm.
instance, it's like I did this with my son. It's like, well, it's not my favorite. Or, you know, or like, he always gets on the van, even if you'd freak out, flip out, whatever. It's like, what other thing can I think about what is happening right now that doesn't send me into fight flight? So, there's that cognitive piece, but then there's also the nervous system piece. Your body is reacting like a tiger is going to eat you. Like it doesn't know the difference, right? Like, so like any danger is a 4-alarm fire within our body. How can you self-regulate your own nervous system so that you're not rising to meet your child's their level of emotions? Because when that happens, you're both like nobody's in charge, right? You're
Right.
both melting down.
Mhm. So what are the ways that you teach them how to do that?
To regulate their nervous systems is
Yeah.
first to understand exactly like what's happening in their body. So they're feeling like the tenseness like in their chest, taking deep breaths. Anything you can do to slow it down is going to help you down regulate, because speed is really the accelerator of the stress response. And so instead of like reacting, we want to slow it down, notice what's happening, self-regulate, whether it's with our breath, with our thoughts and our brain, anything that we can to just reset ourselves. Sometimes it might be walking away. It's usually talking less, because the more you're talking to your child, the more you're escalating them as well, and probably yourself. And so what I say to my parents is talk less to your child and more to yourself. Like, okay, I'm safe.
Mhm.
I got this, like in that type of voice, just to bring yourself down. Because when you're like this and everything is very, very, your body is responding to your voice, it's responding to all of it. And, of course, I say breathe, and people are like, breathe. Breathing actually indicates it sends messages to your brain and to your body that you are safe.
Mhm.
That rhythmic breathing is a way to just instantly downregulate.
And my mind is going back to the times where Robbie would go into his meltdown, but he would actually go after my husband usually, and my husband's very reactive. So it's exactly what you're explaining, and it escalates and escalates, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. I'm like, no, stop talking, stop
Yeah.
yelling, stop talking, calm down, be quiet.
Yeah, and it
And
depends. It's like, listen, if someone's coming, that's happened to me more times than I can tell you. It's like,
Mhm.
look, if you're in a situation where someone is so dysregulated that it's like safety first,
Mhm.
right? Like like, that's when you use your fight flight response to actually fight and flight, right?
Yeah. It reminds me of when you're on the airplane and they tell you if the oxygen mask drop down, put yours on first, then put it on your child.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, exactly.
It's like, you got to come, you can't help them if you're,
Well, it's just the opposite too. It's like, not only can't you help them, but you can actually escalate them. Like, our
Yeah.
children are tuning forks for our emotions, right?
Mhm.
They are laser focused on us, right? And how we're, reacting to them. And so if they sense that we are, shaky, if we're not feeling in control, like
Mhm.
that, they mirror that behavior.
Yeah. I always say that my son, and I think others, they have sort of a sixth sense, and they pick up on what's going on inside somebody, without even any words. So it's almost like your cat there, right? I have the same cat. It's like they pick up on it, and it's hard because you have to keep yourself calm, even though they're the ones that are like causing all the commotion. You have to stay calm so that they don't get set off by you flipping out too. So, but I guess you take it, each family is different, right? Each kid is different. I guess you have to.
So the situations are different. The issues are usually really, really similar.
Mhm.
And so it's, what I like to do with my parents, especially in the first couple of sessions, is just like, let's get it out. Like, what's really going on, right? Your subconscious thoughts. Like, so I will take them into like, okay, you're in the car, you're driving, and your son dumps an entire, jug of, Gatorade, like, all over, right? Like, and taking them back to that spot where they're like, they feel like, their body seizing, they're about to scream. It's like, if we were just push pause and like just jump into your brain, like, what are all the thoughts? And it's like, he did it on purpose, he's ungrateful, he only does this to me. It's like all of that, right? Like, we're carrying that with us. And that is why we can go from 0 to 100 so quickly. It's not because he dumped the water or the Gatorade, it's because of all of that. And so really getting in touch with all of those thoughts, just to be like, I see you. Like, we don't have to be ashamed of them. We don't have to judge them, but just to understand that when our bodies go into that fight flight response, these are the thoughts that we have access to. Like, that's what's running the show. And so just becoming aware of that, and just to be, like, in and of itself can just really like take the temperature down so much.
Right. For me personally, I grew up in an abusive household. Okay. And my dad he'd go overboard with punishments and things. And a lot of times he would pull my hair. And so I found, because I had to check myself, I had to check my reactions when my son would start. And I would go, I knew it. I was very familiar with that fight or flight because I grew up with that.
Yeah.
And I had to stop and think, okay, wait a minute, why am I reacting this way? I know this is a trigger for me from when I was a kid. And I'm like, and that's not that's not what's happening. This is not my father. This is this is Robbie, and he doesn't mean to be doing this. But when he would pull my hair, I'd cry. Because that was just too much of a trigger. But it made me really realize that any women that have ever been in any kind of abusive relationship or anything, for now to have a kid that's coming after them like that, it's going to be a huge trigger. I mean, and it's something really difficult to stay calm. And I want to encourage anybody that if that's you, to you got to go to therapy, and you got to work through that. You got to work over your past demons and things like that, so that you stop reacting to your child out of your own past wounds and hurts and that kind of thing.
I mean, that's just deeply patterned into your nervous system, like that trauma. And it's not that you can't shift it, but it takes such a huge level of awareness and ability to like almost like reparent and to heal some of that. And it will still, it can still be there, but it's like just being really able to take care of yourself. Because I mean, I hear that so much. Like, when I hear yelling, when I hear screaming, I'm just like, it's like I'm right there right away. And so again, in that pause, just to be like, this isn't my, whoever it is for the person, my father, my husband, the like whoever it is, and just being able to take care of yourself is so important. Yeah.
And then the other thing that I would do is I always separated it. Like when Robbie would go, because the moods would do this. And it was like when he'd get like manic, right? That's when he would get violent. He wouldn't sleep and all that kind of thing. And then it would end, and then he'd go swing back down, and he'd be calm, and he'd be my sweet Robbie again, right? So again, in my mind, when he would get that way, to me, I thought of it as this thing that would come on him, this, this evil autism thing that would come on him and make him act like that way, but it wasn't him, if that makes sense. It was this thing that would come on him and drive him, to do those things, and then it would lift and it would go away, and then I'd have my Robbie back. So that just helped me, because when I separated it, it's not Robbie doing that. He doesn't mean it. I'm not taking this personally. He can't help it. It's this, whatever it is, something going on neurologically, whatever it is. And then it would go away. And I don't know, I try to help people with that too, because I see parents, moms on Facebook pages and stuff, and they're getting beat up, and they're some of them are like, I hate my kid. I don't even want to say that, but I feel that that's happening. I'm getting to the point where I hate my own child, and I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to be that way, so so that's my answer. It's like, you have to separate it,
Yeah, I think that's like when you say like, everyone's different. I mean, that's the thing. Like one of the things that like the first thing that I teach my parents is like the behavior is not personal,
right?
Even if it's directed at you. And
right.
I very much understand how that is a hard distinction to make. But when you take it personal, you make it personal.
Right.
You make it about them as a kid, or they're doing it to me, yourself as a parent. And that all just impairs your ability to really have the capacity to manage whatever is happening with your rational brain. And so I say to parents, like, even if you're dead set that this is personal, it's true to you, that you can't get out of that. It's like, then think of it this way. There's no upside to believing that this is personal, because when you believe it's personal, that just puts you in a fight flight, and it keeps you there. And then you are never able to be the parent anymore, right? Because you're just reacting.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. And then you add, kids that don't sleep on top of it, and and then parents that don't sleep too. But are you familiar with RPM, rapid prompting method?
No.
It's a method of communication. Okay. So I've done quite a few interviews with parents that their kids that are nonverbal started to use this method to communicate. And I interviewed Soma, who invented the method. Anyway, they talk a lot about a mind-body disconnect, and how their bodies, they don't have control over their bodies when they do things, and like one mom, her son, was explaining, like she started asking him questions like, well, why did you do this? And why did you do that? Like these behaviors that we're talking about. And he's like, I can't control it. He says, I don't want to do it. I didn't want to do those things. It's like, I just can't control it. It's just like my body just does this. So I guess when I heard that, it kind of validated, what I was doing was sort of separating it. It's like, I know, right, it's not really Robbie. He doesn't want to do it. It's like, it's just like his nervous system is just taking over, and he's in fight or flight, and he can't really control it, and then when it would end, he would always cry. It was like he was sad, like he didn't want that to happen, so so I try to, the reason I do this podcast is try to help other parents too, that are going through these kind of things. So I think by having this discussion, hopefully it helps people, to start to separate it and start to be able to calm down and change their whole way of thinking toward their child. So so how does it work? Do you do virtual visits with people, or you go to the home, or both?
Oh no, the coaching, my coaching program is virtual. So one-on-one coaching sessions, similar to like telehealth. Yeah. You jump on Zoom,
right,
and you do it that way. For each family, it depends on like what the mom is coming to me for. But, we stake out what her goals are, what, success would look like for her. And, we work from there with all of my clients, no matter what they come to me for. We're always, there's always like, two things. main things is there's a cognitive approach that I teach. So I teach my clients a self-coaching model so they understand how to coach themselves. Then I also teach them how to map their nervous systems, the 3 different states of our nervous system, so they understand where they are at any given moment and then how to anchor back into more regulation. Because, just like with anything, it's like you can know something intellectually, but applying it and is very different. And so people will say, I know I shouldn't react, but then I just right. And so that's the part that we really are trying to work on is like, okay, when you get the cues of you want to react, what can we do before they actually even happen? And then, when they're happening, to down regulate you as fast as possible. Does that mean you never react? No, of course not. But you do recover and catch yourself faster the more you implement this, because we all have these deep patterns of how we react to things, especially in fight flight. And so what we're trying to do is see that and then also shift and create new patterns.
Are there so pretty much what we're talking about is the fight or flight? Are there other things that you work on besides that with the moms, or is that the main?
Well, so fight or flight is a state of your nervous system, right? So that's just part of it. So yeah, so if they're in, chronic stress and anxiety, then they're probably living a lot in their fight or flight.
I guess what I'm asking is what else is causing the stress response in them besides a kid having a meltdown? Like, are there other things?
Yeah. So what I like to teach is that the external behavior of whatever your child is doing or the circumstances, those are not causing your anxiety. They're not causing your stress. It's whatever your interpretation is of what's happening, what all your thoughts are. And so again, that's what we try to do in the first couple of sessions is like, this shouldn't be happening to me. This isn't fair. This isn't the life I wanted. All of that creates the anxiety, the stress, the despair, the depression, all of that. So that's where we start, is understanding, okay, like what's under the hood here? Where are you struggling? Why are you're struggling with acceptance? Let's talk about it, right? And and just to be able to give all of that its airtime, but then also deciding like, okay, I can respect these emotions and these feelings and these thoughts, and I can normalize them, but I don't need to let them run the show.
If moms feel that they can use your help, how do they contact you? How do they reach you?
Sure. So I'm everywhere as the Autism Mom Coach. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. My website's the Autism Mom Coach. I have a weekly podcast called the Autism Mom Coach. And so, Lisa at the Autism Mom Coach, like there's a variety of ways to contact me if you're interested, if you want to learn more about my program, if you want to get to know me a little bit. At first, I think my podcast is a great way. I have a presence on social media where I share, tools and resources all the time. And so those are all ways to get in contact with me.
Okay, good. That's how I got in contact with you. So you're responsive, which is great.
Yeah.
What was this?
Great. So one of my tips for how to quell what to do during a meltdown or what not to do, it's a meltdown tip. And so when I was doing it's the hand motions, it was when your child is melting down, which I did the hands or just shaking, is to talk less. Because the more you talk, first of all, they're in a fight flight response, so they're not available. This is not a teachable moment. Right. And the more you're talking, the more, sensory stimuli that you're providing, the more aggravated they're going to get. And usually because you're saying things like, no, you're not getting your iPad anymore. And like, we talked about this before, the rules, like whatever that is, right? And they're just losing their minds. And so the idea is to talk less, because the more you're talking, the more they're melting down, the more likely you're going to start melting down yourself, right?
Yeah.
So it's just the idea of like, whatever you need to say. It's like, I remember ABA telling me short, consistent sentences. This is not the time to lecture. This is not a teachable moment. Just like, put on your shoes. We are leaving now. I'm sorry you're sad. Whatever it is, but not, it's not to keep going on.
Yeah. No is the big trigger.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always no. So what do? So you say no, so they have their meltdown, so you leave them alone, and then do you give them the iPad afterward? No, so what's the next step after that, after the meltdown's over?
Yeah. And one other thing that I teach my clients is about discomfort, like discomfort tolerance for you and your kid. Because when you're saying no to your kid and they're melting down, and you're going to like, okay, you're going to melt down because you're not getting the thing, whatever it is, like, and it's like your ability to manage your own discomfort while they're dysregulated. That's a really big thing, because we can very easily feel unsafe, and not in the unsafe in the way of like, they're going to hurt me, although sometimes yes, but just sort of, we're activated, right? And so our ability to like take care of ourselves and to manage our own dysregulation or feelings of dysregulation when they're kind of going bonkers is a really big part of what I teach parents. Because yeah, like, you're not allowed to drive, you're not going to eat, Skittles for breakfast, and so you're going to, like, we know they're going to have a meltdown. So instead of concentrating on the fact that they're having a meltdown, and you don't think that they should be having a meltdown, let's just concentrate on keeping you calm or calmer.
Right. Right. All right. Wonderful. So that's good. All right. I've got your contact info, and if anybody wants to contact you, they can reach out. You're in Connecticut, right? So you're on the East Coast, so you're on Eastern Standard Time, and they can just set up a meeting or a call with you. All right. Is there anything else that you would want to talk about?
No.
But we didn't hit? Okay. All right, Riffit. Okay. All right. Okay, Lisa, thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you. And if anybody needs help, they reach out to the Autism Mom Coach.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.